if we understood and dealt with trauma as trauma, if we understood what that meant and what it was, I think that we would see radical shifts in how policy is made.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's huge. That makes huge sweeping changes in the world. And so I would like to see uh, people sort of the treatment of trauma, and when things come up for people, big things come up for people and they may potentially be traumatized, that it was really normalized
Mm-hmm.
for us to uh, grapple with it, because I think the implications could be tremendous in a really beautiful way for the world.
Welcome to the Permission to Heal podcast. I am Marcy Brockman. Together, we will discover what brings us meaning and true joy. You only need your own permission to begin. Welcome to Permission to Heal. Hi, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent. Excellent.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
So we're finally together. We rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled and now
Now
we're
is the
here.
time.
That's awesome. It just wasn't meant to be before. So we're both in New York, I think, right? You're in the
Yes.
city?
I'm in the city. You're on Long Island?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Very close, very close. Did you get hampered by the New York Marathon yesterday?
I was in my office working.
Well, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. I know it happened. I do know that it was harder to find a place to have dinner over the weekend because of all the
Yeah, a
people
lot of
in
people
town.
in from out of town
Yeah,
and
so
so
it's
on.
lovely. We need that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after the last year and a half. I'm sure the
Yeah,
restaurants were very happy and the hotels and the whole hospitality industry was very happy to have clients.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Of course, this episode is going to run in a couple weeks, so whatever. Anyway, it is neither here nor there. So we usually begin episodes with the 6 quick questions, gets us
All
off and
right.
running. So what 6 words would you use to describe yourself?
Grounded,
Grounded.
stubborn,
Good.
warm,
Mm-hmm.
maternal, creative, anxious.
Okay.
I think, is that 6?
Yes.
Those were the first 6 that popped into my mind.
Excellent. Why was 6 with a question? You went up at the end. Anxious?
Anxious? I don't know. I usually I'm anxious. No, I don't know.
Damn it, I'm anxious. You caught
I
me.
feel I feel like that didn't go with the other ones, but they do go,
Well,
because that's
yeah,
all me.
we're all varied. I mean, anxiety and stubbornness can go together. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think some of the reasons were, or at least for me, I don't speak for anyone else, some of the reasons I'm anxious is because I'm stubborn.
Oh, flipped. Stubborn because you're anxious, for me, right? If you refuse to give in, it feels safer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could be. Who knows?
maybe.
We could spin that. What's your favorite way to spend a day?
Oh, that varies. It really does vary,
Yeah, it's
but
a seasonal mood thing.
it's a seasonal mood thing. In the summer, it's like being like a lizard, just
Mm.
like in the heat. I love that. This time of year, though, is much more cooking. I love to cook in the fall. I just really do. Um, and spending time, it could be just like time really deeply connecting with, a friend or my
Nice.
husband. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that connection, that deep, comfortable, like cozy sweater kind of connection, not
Mm-hmm.
only feels wonderful, but I think feels even more wonderful considering the pandemic.
Mm.
You know, I just got together with my aunt and cousins and so on after not seeing them for 3 years,
Wow.
and they just live in Jersey. You know, it's not that big of a deal, but between illnesses and life and then the pandemic and who's not vaccinated and we were finally all vaccinated and booster shotted, booster vaxxed, however that goes, booster shot. I don't know.
I always say boosted.
Boosted. There you go. We were boosted, and we finally felt safe enough to get together. And I did not realize how much my heart had missed that.
Yeah.
You know, so much more than just FaceTime or Zoom or text messaging, but to actually sit at a table and share a meal and be able to touch one another. And it was just extraordinary. Okay, question number 3. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait.
I'll just go with the...
Wait.
Oh, my internet is...
Your video froze for a second while I was talking, which is fine. We can just cut that piece out.
Is that better?
No, you're totally frozen. Weird. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Oh, there you go.
So, there. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll just have to pay attention and hope it's okay.
All right. My childhood memory, I just, I have I have a handful, but I'll go with the first that popped in my mind when you asked.
Yes.
When I was a little girl, I would visit I was very close to my grandmother, Gloria, and I would visit her in her apartment in New York City. And it was a long pre-war, had like a long hallway.
Cool.
And the windows came pretty low and had very deep sills. So it was almost like they were all almost kind of like window seats for me as a kid.
Right. For small children or one tush. Right.
And I would play on them. And in my mind, I imagined that the whole apartment, and I think a lot of kids play this kind of game, the floor was all water. And it was like a water city. And there were no cars, there were only boats, and the furniture and the sills were
nice.
And I would play like that for hours. I'm an only child. I'm an only grandchild. So.
Me too. Well, I was until I was in my mid-teens, but yeah.
And then, but what was kind of amazing was I told my grandmother about it, and she said, there's a real place like that in Italy called Venice. I'll take you there. And she took me there.
Awesome.
The next
How
year.
old were you? Like 9?
I was 9. I was 9.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you excited? You must have been thrilled.
Yeah, I'm still excited. I wish I would love to go back. I haven't been back.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool.
I really remember so much of that trip. It was her and my mother. This was my mother's mother.
Yeah.
And me, 3 generations.
That's so beautiful.
It was a really nice trip.
Hope you have 1,000 photographs.
I do.
That's wonderful. When you were telling me about the windowsills and the water, I thought about something I hadn't thought about in a very long time. I used to sit upside down on my mother's couch in the living room so that my back was on the seat of the couch and my legs were up on the back of the couch on the wall so that my head was hanging over the edge where your legs normally are. And so my head was upside down.
Yep.
And I would stay that way for such a long time that my perspective would shift so that the floor would become the ceiling and the ceiling would become the floor. And then it looked like everybody was walking on the ceiling.
Right.
I used to love doing that. And my mother she was, are you going to be dizzy? All your blood's rushing to your head. But, I'm like 6, 7 years old. Who cares,
Right.
I hadn't thought about that in ages. Somehow your memory triggered that. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Let's try number 4. What is your favorite meal? Again, this could be seasonal and mood related, of course.
Oh my gosh, my favorite meal.
Or one of them.
Oh, I love to cook.
Right.
I love to eat. So I'm feeling like totally okay. So what came into my mind, which is funny because I don't think this is true for me anymore, but I'll share it anyway, is I guess I want to go to Italy because it was cacio e pepe. I went through a very big cacio e pepe.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, okay. It's a dish. It's where you have the hot pasta. The cacio is cheese, pepe is pepper, and
Okay.
they take the hot pasta and spin it through a carved out wheel of Parmesan while it's hot.
Ah,
So it gets all covered in the Parmesan and black
wow.
pepper. And I mean, I haven't eaten that in a bajillion years. In that, I am making pasta tonight, but I wasn't planning to make cacio e pepe, but maybe I should.
Interesting. I'm not a pepper kind of person, except if it's like just used as one of the seasonings in
Mm-hmm.
something. But that cheese part, that's got me. I like that.
Yeah. There's if you come into the city, there
Yeah.
is a restaurant called Cacio e Pepe in the East Village.
Ah,
You get yourself some there.
there you go. Will they do it just katya without the pepe?
I don't know. You'll have to ask. Call ahead.
Hold the pepper. I don't know. Unless it's already pre-mixed in. Who knows? All right, let's move on to number 5. What is the one piece of advice you would like to give your younger self? Assuming your younger self would listen to you.
Right. Um, Even if it's very uncomfortable, be true to yourself.
That's huge. Especially the even if it's very uncomfortable part. That resonates with me a lot. Deeply.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when we're kids, not when we're little kids, but when we're adolescents,
Mm-hmm.
kids, it's healthy to want to start to find yourself in your peer group. Um, so it would be very uncomfortable. I know, it's very uncomfortable to honor yourself while longing for acceptance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a very little kid, actually, all through elementary school and probably middle school, was very shy. I had my friends, but it was a tight, small friend group, which was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to try, and I longed to be part of like the dramas and the musicals in high school. And
Okay.
I wanted to try out for solos and band and chorus. And, and I knew I had a good singing voice, but I was petrified.
Right.
And there was a moment my freshman year of high school where I realized that if I allowed myself to be ruled by my shyness, I would never experience this whole list of things that I wanted to experience. And I was unwilling to let the shyness win.
Mm.
And so it was like I had a talking to with myself,
Sure.
like if you say the thing, tell the joke, sing the song, whatever it is that you think you want to do that you hold yourself back from doing, if you do it, what's the very worst thing that could happen?
Right.
If they laugh at you, are you going to feel bad? If you don't get the part, if they walk away, if no one laughs at the joke, if they think you're ridiculous, is the earth going to swallow you whole? And when I realized that none of the catastrophe things were going to bother me as much as having to say what if and feeling bad about myself,
Right.
I said, screw it, I'm just going to do it. And I remember standing, it was I had joined the publicity committee for the fall drama my freshman year of high school. I can't even tell you what the name of the show was. And we stayed after school, and we were drawing posters or photocopying posters and hanging them up on the walls around the school. And there was a bunch of us standing in a little bit of a group, and everyone was sort of telling jokes. And I'm never funny, premeditatively funny. I'm only spontaneously funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I just threw caution to the wind, and I said, okay, here's the moment, say the joke. And I opened my mouth and I said whatever it was, don't remember what it was. And they laughed, and nobody thought it was like, oh, Marcy, you said something. It was like no one noticed. Like it was just part of the flow and the riff of the thing. And I was like, wow, that worked okay,
Exactly.
And that was like the beginning of the thing. I don't know. So I would say that your advice is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Hopefully, I don't know if I would listen to it though.
No,
As
I
a
don't
kid.
know. Depends on the age. If I had
Right.
gone back and said that to myself when I was 14, I would have said, okay, damn straight, I get it. But
Right.
11, probably not.
Mm-mm.
Middle school age, middle school was terrifying. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. Absolutely not. Okay, number 6. What is
Yeah.
the one thing you would most like to change about the world? Yes, it's a small question.
Oh, well, I was talking actually with my mother earlier today. We were talking about the work I do,
Mm,
um, and she was. It made me think of a question I got asked in an interview, my first interview for anything. I actually don't think the article ever even came out, and I was pretty new to the work, working with trauma, and the interviewer asked me like big picture, what did I see like in this work? And I was like, well, it sounds silly at first, but like if we understood and dealt with trauma as trauma, if we understood what that meant and what it was, I think that we would see radical shifts in how policy is made.
yeah.
And I mean, that's huge. That makes huge sweeping changes in the world. And so I would like to see uh, people sort of the treatment of trauma, and when things come up for people, big things come up for people and they may potentially be traumatized, that it was really normalized
Hmm.
for us to uh, grapple with it, because I think the implications could be tremendous in a really beautiful way for the world.
I absolutely 1,000% agree. And I'm starting to see little bits of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Not grand sweeping, national policy, but just as a little tiny thing, our school district, our particular school, I'm a high school English teacher by day.
Oh, okay.
And we had in the last year 3 of our faculty members pass away from COVID.
Mm.
And the faculty was shocked and has, there's going to be repercussions of that and all sorts of trauma, etc. And the student body, of course, they're all teenagers and they all knew these teachers. And each of them is going through their own experience with COVID and their families and all the loss and burdens and difficulties, etc. And the school district was like, heard us say that we needed help.
Mm.
And they got a group called Project Hope to
Oh, sure.
come in over, the course of several weeks and stay the whole day in one of the back conference rooms to meet with people and talk one-on-one, to do meditation, to do, whatever modalities, breathing that they were doing. And I thought, finally, somebody is going to address what's sitting in our laps and not just try to look around it to
Right.
continue along with the academics, you know?
Absolutely.
It's only, almost the end of 2021, thank goodness, but several years ago, that wouldn't have never happened.
Oh,
Maybe
never.
even
No, no.
before the pandemic, that would have never happened. I don't know.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. Pretty amazing. Okay, so let's get into it. I loved your book. Loved your book. Lifting heavy things. I like
Thank you.
the whole feel of it. Even I like the cover. I read through the whole thing. I felt like I was sitting with you and we were having a chat. I wrote notes in the margins and all sorts of stuff. I'm not a weightlifter, and it's very intimidating. But after reading your book, I might try it.
You also, don't have to do the lifting of weights. You can, I mean, you can.
Right.
I would, but it talks about how to do it without.
Well, I mean, I joined a Pilates class 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so
Awesome.
I'm lifting my own body weight, which is pretty heavy anyway.
Pilates,
So,
I always say about Pilates, like I'm afraid I get nervous doing Pilates, and I'm like, and people are like, oh, you're
feels
so strong,
so
and I'm like,
good.
Pilates strong is like a whole other kind of strong. It's amazing to me. And I've
It's on one of
always,
those reformer
the
table.
reformer stuff.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. Feels
it's
so
pretty
good.
good.
Suddenly, after like 4 classes, I think I did 5 classes so far,
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking better. Like
Mm-hmm.
my hip joints and my piriformis and all that whole system in there was so tight. I felt like I was waddling like an 80-year
Sure.
old.
Sure.
And just a couple of sessions, and I'm like, oh, my legs are like Gumby now. It's heaven. Anyway, so let's talk more about this. So tell us all about your childhood, who you are, what young Laura looked like. How did you get to kind of where you are now? It's a huge question, but no one can tell it better than you.
No one can tell mine better than me. It's true.
Right.
So yes, how well I am. I was when I was very little. I lived on Long Island,
Okay.
and I growing up, I moved around a little bit and was in Westchester and New York City, which is where I am now. I did leave for 10 years. I know some people don't ever leave. I did leave for 10 years and came back. And growing up, I was an artsy kid. I was often drawing. I did take dance classes until I was, I think I did dance classes at the local dancing school. My mom took me out when I was about 8, I think, because they were going to start having us do like traveling, and she was not into that.
Right.
She didn't want me to be used as a prop for business, I think.
Right.
So, but I liked dance and would continue to dance, like put on Madonna records and
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson records and dance in the living room.
That was me. I always thought that I was the most graceful. I was probably the biggest klutz ever, but in my mind, I was,
Absolutely.
you know, a nice dancing queen.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I know. I'm still like that. And uh I had a pretty I had a challenging adolescence. Um and in that time I really didn't like associating with my body at all. Like I saw my body as my body kind of became an unsafe thing, right? Like I was picked on and eventually actually bullied for a year in one of the schools I was in middle school. And I was a little bit chubby. And that was some low hanging fruit, man, and people
Mm-hmm.
would really use that
People
in the
can be mean.
bullying. And I growing up, it was a being thinness was really valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't, I was kind of normal, but for whatever reason, there was a big emphasis on the fact that my body wasn't this ideal, right? And then in the 90s, as a teenager, when it was, Kate Moss,
Right. Right.
this little, this little
Anybody who was
exotic Jewish
healthy.
girl,
Right.
was like never going to happen, right? And
Right.
that's when you desperately want to look like who's ever on the billboards, right?
Exactly.
So and it just didn't feel also being in New York City at that by that age and walking around in high school in the body of a woman, being street harassment and that kind of thing felt unsafe. So there was just like a lot to not want to have to deal with, like.
Sure.
And I didn't like gym class,
Oh, I hated
and and so I would like cut to go smoke cigarettes in the park. That went much better with my image,
that.
right? Like
Sure.
art kid in the park, not
Right. Do you do the
doing
goth
sports.
thing too?
It was very grunge with a touch of goth. Like
More Nirvana, early 90s grunge. Okay.
I did have, I think my favorite was this like crushed velvet black maxi dress, which I always wore Doc Marten boots. And this was
Oh,
before they had
me
the
too.
zippers, right? So
Uh-huh.
this, there were no zippers when we were young.
No.
Now they have zippers for easy on off. So the
They
14
do? Oh,
eyelets,
yeah, they
yeah.
do. My daughter has a pair with zippers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14 eyelets, lace it up, the whole thing. So with the motorcycle jacket,
Uh-huh.
it was a look.
A little older than you, but I had the same look. Yep.
And I just didn't college, we have PE requirement, which I was like so put out by, but did some whatever, got it over with. And
I did
it was
dance
when
and
I
ice skating for PE in college.
I did
That was great.
self-defense for women.
Well,
Wait,
that's useful in the city.
well, now I was at Mount Holyoke, so it was a bunch of women and some,
Okay.
I don't know, cows. And then, but it is useful. It's a useful skill, absolutely. And I actually did the weight room.
Oh, good
This
for
was
you.
it was machines, but I was like, well, I always knew it, and that was the thing. I always knew I was kind of strong, even though I didn't want to do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could always. What it was I thought of myself, even though I thought of myself as quite big, and we talked about I'm stubborn, I'm
Mm-hmm.
grounded, so I always felt I could like leverage my weight against
Sure.
something else and move it. So I was like, well, I guess I'll lift weights. So that was one term. I did West African dance. That was fun.
Ooh, that's
So
fun.
again, the dancing, right?
Yeah.
And then yoga, which would show up for me later on in life. When I was doing it then, it was very like, I want a nap, but
Right.
it was fine. And so, but it was also in college when my back went out for the first time. It went out, I was 20 years old, and I was
You
getting
talked
up
about
from
this in your book.
yeah, I was getting up from a chair at my library job. So like, I think I say this in the book, like I wasn't even doing something cool,
Right.
it was about as nerdy as you
I
can
was
get.
standing
And
up in the library. Right.
right. After doing data entry. So I get up and my back seizes and I am frozen.
Ugh.
And it's terrifying. And it's the summer. I stayed up there in the summer. So it was the summer and I had to get back to my apartment. And I could barely drive myself home. Eventually, my mom saw me. She made me come back to the city and go see an orthopedist. And he gave me a script for physical therapy and told me to start strength training. And I did the physical therapy and I was not going to go to the gym. Nope. And I knew from physical therapy, the elliptical was like enough to sort of like get by when it's seized up. So I did the bare minimum. I did the PT. When my back would get really bad, I would use the health center at school, the fitness center. And I hobbled around in pain for 7 years.
Wow.
And I was like,
stubborn.
I'm not.
There you go.
I'm not doing this. I really, I had a lot of reasons, but I would say I felt I was, and this was all from all the stories that this narrative all came from all the things from before. I was too fat to go to the gym. I wasn't athletic enough to go to the gym. People will be mean to me at the gym. My body is bad. Mm-hmm. It needs to change. So it was all this like place of deficit, weakness, badness, problem.
Right.
So like
many women have that.
Right. I think it's really normal.
Just teaches us to feel like crap so that we go and spend money on stuff.
And how many times, I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I'm too fat to go to the gym. And people in fitness, the response is usually like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm like, well, actually, let's unpack.
It's not ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. There's a reason. There are many reasons, and that could be its own
podcast. For me, the too fat that comes to the gym doesn't get expressed that way. For me, it's like, what am I going to wear for workout clothes? Like what clothing will I wear that I can move in and feel comfortable and feel covered enough to feel safe? You know, like when I was in my 20s, I wasn't all that fit, but I was thinner. So I could get away with leggings and a tank top or something, like the stomach was still flat. But post babies, post menopause, it ain't flat anymore. And it's a little curvier than I'm comfortable with, but c'est la vie, I'm working it. It is what it is at this moment. And so I need belly, like longer shirts or something. And like what, so to me, it shows up that way. Anyway, this is about you.
Right. And I know I get it. And I was going to say my belly has never been flat. That was not for me a thing, but it was like, if people are going to see me, so I tried to disappear. So it was, what could I wear that no one would notice me, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I eventually did start showing up, which happens because my mom was like, I'm tired of looking at you walking around. I moved back to the city where she was. And she said, I'm tired of looking at you moving around like you're 70 years old. You're 27. I want you to meet my trainer. And I was like,
Your
but I
mother had a
wanted to,
trainer. That's
yeah,
progressive.
yes. And she worked out so she could enjoy her life, not to, this was not about vanity for her. It was about maintaining
Maintaining
active.
health.
She liked to ride
Yeah.
her bike around the city, which in itself is kind of amazing.
Extremely
And,
dangerous. That would scare the crap out of me.
you know, she just liked to be able to do things. And she's watching her friends lose the ability to bend over and tie their shoes. And she's like, I don't want to be like that.
Right.
It was an independence. She was doing it for like independence and to be able to enjoy herself. And
Go mom.
yeah, yeah, it's great. And she asked me to meet her trainer, and I was like, oh, but I knew I wanted to start a family, and I knew I would have problems with pregnancy with my back. And also after I lived like in a walk up, like
Mm-hmm.
how is I going to walk up my
With groceries
stairs?
and a baby and a stroller and all that other stuff if you
Right.
couldn't carry yourself up the stairs.
Exactly. So I acquiesced and I met her trainer. And we just really connected and we're very close. And he's currently writing my programs now. I've gone back and forth over time, but we're very good friends. And he created space for me to show up to this gym and take care of myself and not be too preoccupied with everybody else.
That's awesome.
And he honestly, he did it with like kindness. And also, I do think his nickname, his name is Ed. His nickname is Big Ed for a reason. He is actually like a wall. So he would physically create space in the gym.
Right. And no one was
because
going to pick on you if you were with Big Ed the Wall. Right.
Right. And he's so kind and well respected, and respecting of other people, that actually that was like, so when people were around in the space, they were also more kind and respectful. So I kept showing up because my back started to stop hurting. And that was it.
That's a good
That was
motivator.
how yeah, that was it. I was like, oh, and I could, I liked my time with him. I hated doing the exercises, but my back stopped hurting. And I was like, okay. Right. And over time, I started to find, when I started to be able to like graduate to exercises I deemed, cool. Mm-hmm. So things with weights, I liked it more and more. It would be 8 years before I would point to people doing Olympic weightlifting and say, I want to do that. So that was when I was 34. And that was when the shift from like, so it was like, no, then begrudgingly, and then like, okay, I guess I'll do this, to, oh my God, you cannot keep me away. And so that's awesome. When I actually, so I was 34 when I fell in love with anything that had anything to do with the gym. And it was really empowering. And it was so right. So I was like, everything was about deficit, my bad back, the way my body looked. Like I wasn't fast. That's something I'm still not particularly fast. Now we're focusing on, I'm strong. I can get stronger. I have the ability to grind, right? Just in general in my life, when there's a lot of pressure, I can keep going. Mm-hmm. Strength sports really play to that, right? Right. So I was really embracing all these things about me. I desire to be subversive, right? The goth girl, the kid who cut class to smoke in the park. Right. Well, a woman, a middle-aged lady doing Olympic weightlifting before CrossFit got really big, especially, that's subversive, right? So it's like, right. Oh, there was no other women in this gym.
You're badass, just Laura.
Exactly. That's why I was like, it looks cool, right?
Right.
So these were playing to my strengths. And that was kind of how that unfolded.
Nice.
Becoming a trainer and a coach, that was like never on the radar, but that I just love that.
Can we stop for half a second? How did you transition from weightlifting to help your back feel better to realizing that weightlifting helped you deal with trauma?
Yeah.
Like,
So I after I fell in love with the sport of weightlifting, and after, you know, 8, 9 years of being in the gym, um, and feeling so empowered, I experienced an acute trauma outside of the gym,
okay.
and subsequently developed PTSD. And it was a journey from there because actually, I turned the gym from something that was empowering, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to feel invulnerable now. So it actually became something that was beautiful and empowering to something that became maladaptive. And I was training and training and training and training. And I trained 10 times a week. I trained
Wow.
Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, and karate.
Wow.
All aggressive, no steady state cardio, which, you know, I'm a big proponent of for recovery. No yoga, no no, no sleeping. Right,
Right.
I have PTSD. I'm not really talking about it with people, but I am not sleeping anymore. I am also restricting my food to be able to put on more muscle and get stronger and faster, but I'm actually not. I'm taking terrible care of my body,
Right.
but I didn't understand any of that. And fitness culture, you know, is all about, especially this kind of the where I was in, it was very like, oh, look at her determination. Look at how thin she's getting. It's the only time in my life I was ever slim. I was like really jacked. I was showing up no matter what. I was pushing through pain. And these are all really celebrated in that world.
Even
And they
though
are
half of
not
what you're
what you
doing
should
is
do.
detrimental to your health. Right.
It's not health and wellness. It's like some other thing. And my back, it came full circle and my back went out, and it went out so severely. It was terrifying. I lost the capacity to use my left lower leg much. Like I couldn't point
Wow.
and flex my foot. So it really limited my gait. And it made my whole back seized up again. Like my job in the library, here I am, I'm constricted, I can barely move. And I've been training to feel safe and invincible. And now I can barely walk.
Oy,
So
oy.
I am terrified.
You probably felt betrayed by your own body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was, I don't know how long of a time it was. I was in bed a lot. I was going to the doctor and getting injections, going to PT. Everything felt invasive. And I knew it was all, everything was tied up with the trauma, right? And I was in therapy at the time also. So I was doing talk therapy, but we are like at the top of everything. Like it's going to be a journey. We're at the
Skimming the
beginning.
surface, you mean, not really getting into anything deep? Is that what you mean?
Well, it was a mess. It wasn't that we weren't trying. There was just so much to unpack.
Okay.
And I was in therapy 3, 4, sometimes 5 days if I could see her 5 days.
Wow. That's intense.
Um, it was. And but I was just, my therapist was the only place. Now I didn't have the gym anymore. So my therapist was the only place I
Yeah.
felt safe. Um, and I connected the things, and I was like, there's got to be a book on this. And I was looking for a book called Healing Back Pain by John Sarno.
Mm-hmm.
And I was using a service here in the city, Amazon Prime Now, where they get it to you in like 2 hours. They didn't
Nice.
have that book, but they were like, but we do have. And it was this brand new book called The Body Keeps the Score, which, if you know this book, you'll know that now it's been on the bestseller list for like
4,000
5 years.
years. Right.
Um, and so this was Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, and it came in 2 hours, probably with like some ice cream and batteries or something. I don't know, who knows, like random stuff that you got delivered. And I read this book. It's a dense book. It's a book about trauma and how trauma shows up in the body and in the brain, and really gets into the physiology of trauma and how that ripples out into somebody's life, as well as body-based modalities to consider for treating trauma. I am reading this like I'm reading a murder mystery. I'm like,
Page turner.
I mean, it's, yeah, absolutely, because I'm seeing myself for the first time. All the stuff that I thought was weird, I thought I had kind of become this monster. I was very irritable. I was mean. I was cutting everybody out, um, trying to turn myself into a machine. Like I knew that that wasn't
Right.
me, but that was me now. So like, and I didn't put it like mapped it all out and showed me like what part of my brain had changed.
Wow. Oh, I'm getting
And I
this
was,
book.
and so I just felt like, oh, the, and then it presents treatments, right? And I
Huh.
was like, oh, I can do something about this.
That
Um,
must have been so empowering right there.
it, it was. And so my focus, I started to look for people who understood trauma to help me. And that was a slog. It wasn't always easy. I did find people though who maybe didn't fully understand, but were open to learning. So that was really good. And while all that's going on, I'm trying to get movement back in my life because I do know at its core, when I do it the way I was doing it before,
Mm-hmm.
that it was wonderfully empowering. And there was a reason I wanted it in my life, because there is a reason I felt safe when I was doing it, right? There was good stuff in there. So I tried things. I tried yoga. By that point, I had actually had many, many years of a regular yoga experience. Um, but it was very triggering for me. And even the trauma informed, trauma sensitive stuff, which is not to say there's nothing wrong. It just wasn't for me. And I want to be
Sure.
very clear
Sure.
about that. And I knew that I felt safest in these barbell clubs. That's where I felt safe. So I needed to figure out how to train, how to start moving my body in a way. I mean, I started from the bottom before.
Mm-hmm.
How can I get strong enough and take care of my body and train going forward in a way that's going to honor my nervous system where it is at any given moment?
That's huge.
And I started to figure it out. And then, like many people who go through something, the next sort of thing was, I want to share this with people.
Right.
And that is how that happens.
That's cool. So, I can imagine what listening to you talk that, being stuck in your trauma and being
Mm-hmm.
stuck in PTSD and being stuck in like ruminating over all of that negative pain, et cetera, gets you, because I've been there in my own way, gets you really stuck in your head,
Oh, yes.
and there was a portion of time, X number of years, I don't exactly know, where I sort of envisioned my life, my body rather, as like a vehicle for my brain.
Mm-hmm.
That my body wasn't really connected to my brain. It was just the car that my brain was in. And I I I I still fight that because so much of what I do is cerebral, is intellectual, and I'm not sporty, I'm not athletic by nature. And yet when I do sort of force myself into some sort of regular, irregular exercise, movement, something, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, like I can feel like more grounded and more balanced and more calm just for having moved.
Absolutely.
But I forget
And
that, like when I'm
absolutely,
not doing it, you know, it's
I
just,
get it. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Jennifer, who had actually one of the editors on my book. I was panicking because I've had this like very busy, it's now the beginning of the fall. I had this really busy summer into fall, lots of plates spinning, lots of things going on. So lots of brain, right?
right.
And I'm talking to my friend Jennifer, and I was like, I'm really scared. My writing practice is really like I'm not writing. And I was writing daily, all the time, poetry, all sorts of stuff. And like, I just, and
Well, you were so busy. How much bandwidth could you have?
Well, yeah, but I wanted it. And I was like, what happened? And she said, well, I feel almost silly bringing this up to you, but it sounds like maybe you're really in your head because you would have to be to manage all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not coming from you're not in your body. And maybe you want to do a practice that gets you in your body. Because I always would write in the morning,
Right.
first thing in the morning. And then she gave me examples of what she does. And I was like, of course. I she felt
Right.
silly saying it to me because that's what I tell people all the time, right? Is like in
Right.
order to live
Physician
our
heal
full
thyself. Right.
lives, exactly. The
Not that we're
creative
doctors,
stuff,
just saying that.
right? The creative work, I have done, like around, a lot of people write about their trauma, in order to really do this in a safe and way that you process it, and that you help the reader also stay with you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come from a grounded place and have those things, and like, why can't I write? Because you're in your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
what
I
did you
get it.
do? Like meditation, stretching, calisthenics? What
Honestly,
did you do?
first I gave myself permission to not write.
Okay. We're all
That
about
was
permission
first.
here. It's the name of
And
the
then
podcast.
that's right, exactly. And then I was like, okay. And I had been my training shifted over the summer, and it was a little more like general fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So I could play, it was a lot about helping me so I could try tennis, which I had
Mm-hmm.
a blast doing. I'm very bad at it. It's fun. Doesn't matter that I'm
It's
bad
fun
at it.
even if you suck. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
like, but you want to protect shoulder health, and with my back history, like to be able to like do something weird with my body and to not worry. Right.
Right.
So it's a different, I didn't have access to a barbell over the summer either. So it's just a very different way of training. It was hiking, and like, I just wasn't doing heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't lifting heavy things. And I have
Lifting
shifted my
heavy things.
attention. Exactly. I shifted my attention in my training also in the last 2 weeks to really focus on like squat, press, and pull, like heavy weight again, back in the barbell, back in the squat rack. And it's already made a huge difference. And I wrote the essay I had been trying to write all summer. I mean, I wrote all summer. I wrote all this other stuff. I finally wrote, the first draft of this essay that has been plaguing me for 2 years.
Wow.
Earlier this week.
Mazel
So,
tov.
lifting heavy things is what I did to get back in my body.
Well, there you go. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So a client comes to you.
Hmm.
Where do you begin? How do you help him or her unravel, or them? Sorry, him, her, or them. I have to get with the pronouns. How do you help them begin to figure out where to begin?
Sure. I mean, if somebody's coming to me specifically, they probably want a strength train. So
I would
but
imagine.
even if, but there are times where people, I do work with people in sort of more like workshopy ways where it's like, well, they're not necessarily predisposed to strength train, but we start by figuring out what it is they might want to try, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, and this is but if somebody comes to me, they want to strength train. Similarly, I start by getting to know their resources, their goals, their strengths. And by
Physical
strength,
resources, emotional resources, mental resources, all of it.
all of it. So resources, a lot of people think resources like time and money. Also, I ask who in your life supports you and champions your small successes.
Okay, that's huge.
That's an important resource to know. Do you have a pet? What's their name? Right? That's a question I ask. That is a resource. Do you have a spiritual practice? That can be a resource. I'm getting a full picture of this person's life. All the sort of good juicy stuff, are there or communities that they're a part of, anything that is a source of support. So that can be relationships, it can be objects, it can be feelings they get from doing certain things they love to do. So that's part, and very similar to resources is strengths. And I don't just mean like things you're good at, but things that you can call upon when things are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was talking about
Resilience, stubbornness. Right.
right, that like grinding thing
Yeah.
that I do, right? That's a strength. I can
Grit.
rely on that.
Yeah.
And I know that that translates well to the strength training, right? So what are those things for the person? What are their goals, right? It's important that we're working on their goals, not anyone else's goals. Not certainly not my goals, but also not their partner's goals,
Mm-hmm.
their doctor's goals. Like
It has
what
to
are
be
their
personal
goals?
to them, unique to
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
So that's all part of like typical intake stuff, like injury history and anything like that. A lot of
Sure.
people don't realize that even a sprained ankle when you were 13 can show up when you're 50. So these are just things to know, for me to know. And so getting to know their body and getting to know their nervous system, just even by being with them, talking to them, and a movement assessment.
Sure.
And that's where we start.
I love that that I mean you talk about this from the very beginning of the book, that although lots of your clients may come to you with past trauma,
Mm.
that you don't have any pressure for them to disclose what that was. You
No.
know, it's just enough to know that it was there, and let's move from there. You know,
Yeah.
that you don't have to, which I think is so respectful and so compassionate. I was really taken by surprise by that in a very loving, generous, wonderful way. You know, I just think that that's wonderful.
The work one of the things that I caught on from the Body Keeps the Score book at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning was that, and then would deepen my sort of knowledge of, was this idea that the trauma is not the narrative, it's not what happened. The trauma is the imprint, right? It's what's going on. Like that's what we're working with. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in order to do healing around the trauma, you have to confide in somebody, a trusted person who's going to really meet you in that space and hear you and see you, witness that. But you don't need to tell everybody.
Right. You
And
aren't
I
your trauma. You're
exactly, and I think when you're, especially when you're in treatment, it's really easy to start to feel like you are your trauma. Like
sure.
I'm going to therapy 4 days a week talking about it. Like it's pretty
Right.
consuming. Um, so this is an opportunity. If I am working with the physiology of somebody, I am noticing their physiology and I'm helping them with that. I don't need to know the story that led to it.
Right.
Because I'm not helping them process the story. And it gives them the opportunity to get in their body and do some self-care work and separate from the trauma story.
Yeah.
Have a little space. Remember that I am all of these things, not just my trauma story. So it's a break
That's
from
huge.
that. Yeah.
That's huge. So walk us through. I want you to tell everybody about the structure of your book, which I find really wonderful. And
Sure.
one of the reasons why people have to go out and get themselves a copy of this. And the link to it will be in the show notes. So scroll down. If you're not driving, scroll down and just click on it and buy one now.
Absolutely. I agree. Buy them for
just,
everybody on your holiday list.
Yes, it's a great Hanukkah and Christmas present. You want your loved ones to be healthy and strong, body and mind. That's awesome.
Absolutely. So the structure,
it's very interesting.
It's laid out in 3 parts. And the first one is conditions. The second part is activation. And the third part is recovery. And then within each, there are chapters. The chapters generally open with what I realized I really like to write. Even I kind of knew, but like finally admitted publicly, a little bit of personal narrative. And that's what they usually open with. And then we get into more research and information. And then there's always a practical exercise towards the end. And by exercise, I don't mean like a bicep curl. I mean, it's sense-based, a meditation. It might be a physical action, a writing prompt. And these are all sort of structured to take you along. So by the end of the book, if you are interested in taking on an embodied movement practice, you are sort of set up with some basic tools to do that and have a place to start.
Yeah.
And then the reason those sections are there is that is actually how I think about a single workout, how I think about a workout program, and how I think about healing, right? Which is we need to set the conditions first. By that, I mean, what do we need to feel safe? What do we actually need, practically speaking, in terms of a workout? Like, what do we need to work out? What equipment do I need? What time of day does it need to be? What kind of community or culture do I need from the place I'm doing this in? These are all like really valid and important questions that you want to ask and think about when you're trying to pick something that you can sustain. And it's not like, sorry, knocking my shield. Hopefully this will be enough. That you can sustain, even when you like don't necessarily feel like going to the gym that day, but you don't fall off the wagon, right? Like people, I don't know how many of us have unused gym memberships and treadmills.
I have one right now.
Treadmills that are closets, we got your clothes on it, right? So how can we
I have a whole gym system in my basement that functions right now as a cat gymnasium.
The lucky cat.
The cats play on them. A rowing machine that I can no longer use because I herniated L5 and I can't do that movement anymore. And a treadmill that I've had since the year of the flood that the cats, I don't even know what they do on it. It's, whatever.
I will tell you that my back injuries all come from herniated discs in my lumbar spine.
Ah, there you go.
And I do a lot of rowing. So it is possible. Yeah, that's my favorite form of cardio.
I love the way a rowing machine feels. That's great. That whole stretching movement. I love that. So maybe with the Pilates, I'll strengthen my back more and I'll be able to actually do it.
So. Pilates is wonderful for the trunk. So that's conditions. Activation, right? That's like your blood's pumping. You're doing your workout, right? And in the book, I'm also talking about fundamental to the way I approach strength training is embodied movement, which I also talk about as mindful movement. I think more people are familiar with mindfulness. So like a moving meditation, right? And we think of like, oh, yoga, I guess when done correctly, oftentimes
it can be meditative. Absolutely.
Yeah. But you can do that. You can actually turn anything into a mindfulness moment. And so that's a huge part of the strength training, my approach to strength training. And I really get into why and how that helps support trauma healing as well, how that shows up in the rest of your life. And that's what recovery, the end of a workout, maybe you do a cool down, as Jane Fonda calls it. And I've got my ode to the Jane Fonda at home workout is in there. It's my favorite.
That was my jam in the 80s, man. I had the shiny tights and the belted, what do you call it, leotard and the leg warmers, and I did the whole Jane Fonda workout thing. And
so good.
I found my ass for the first time when I was like 14, 15 years old. And suddenly I could wear like a shorter skirt that was like a sweater knit kind of thing. And
sure.
I could not do that before. And I was like, wow, is that my ass? Wow. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane Fonda.
It was on a copy of a copy on a VHS tape that I got from somebody. And
it's all available online now. Officially, like you can get all of her workouts, even the original, the 1982 original. You can watch them on your computer. You can do it along. I mean, a friend of mine, when I was helping me, my writing coach actually, who was helping me with the book, she early on in COVID, she took it upon herself to like do a variety of all of these like home workouts, I think in part because of the book. And she did this one. She was like, it was a blast. It was a trip.
Yeah.
And I definitely dabbled in it as well as I was doing my research for the book.
It's fun.
So yeah, so we're preparing our body, that cool down, doing things at the end of the workout to prepare your body for rest and recovery is really important. And I talk about alternatives for people who struggle with stillness. It's very important. And that was actually, I struggle with stillness, which was one of the reasons I struggled with trauma informed yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we find rest when we struggle with stillness? Right?
Yeah,
That's
I
a
don't know
big
how to
part
sit
of my
still.
work. So that's really an important piece, is you don't have to sit still to recover. And then also in that recovery section is a look at how this stuff spills out into the rest of your life, right? Into your relationships. And things like boundaries and knowing your boundaries and enforcing your boundaries. That's all part of this work. And so that's all in
I
that
didn't
last
actually
section.
figure out what a boundary was
Sure.
until my mid 40s.
And everybody's like, know your boundaries, enforce
And I'm
your
like,
boundaries.
what are you talking about? The fences around my property? Like, what do you mean boundaries? And then I heard somebody, I don't know who it was, say, boundary is simply knowing what's okay and what's not okay. And I was like, oh shit, that's it? That's what the whole thing is?
But the
But
thing is
they're
that
so hard to figure out and enforce.
and if what gets overlooked is like know your boundaries and practice enforcing them. But like, okay, so how do I know what's okay and what's not okay? If you
Right.
are very disconnected and you're living in here and you've got a whole bunch of social rules dictating everything, and you don't want to, you're a people pleaser maybe, or whatever, it's
That was
very
me.
hard if your body is telling you things, but if you're disconnected from it, you don't know it. And so that is like, I'm always like, yeah, no, it's great. Boundaries are great. Listening to your boundaries is great, but you have to know how to hear them, right? You have to have access to them, and that you get from your
Right. You have to
body.
have access to them. But besides even knowing what they are, and that's huge to figure out, having the agency to enforce them,
Right.
not being afraid to say, no, this isn't comfortable. I don't like this. I'm not happy here, or I'm not doing that, or you're not coming here, or whatever it is. I think I figured out what some subset of my boundaries were before I had the chutzpah to
Sure.
enforce them.
Oh yeah.
Because I was still too afraid of someone saying you're not worth my time or energy to deal with that level of stuff. I'm out of here.
Absolutely.
And I
I
had to
think
come to terms with the fact that I'm perfectly fine with you in my life and I'm perfectly fine without you in my life. So if you don't do it on my terms, get the fuck out.
exactly. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard to say that if you
Yeah.
haven't been
I was in
saying
my
that.
late, I'm only 53 now. I was in my late 40s before I had the chutzpah to do that,
I
to
think, yeah,
protect myself. It's
I
hard
see.
shit.
It's hard. You got there. And I see, I I had some experiences prior to the second back injury. So just when I was strength training up, like and doing weightlifting for love, where I was tired of my boundaries being violated in the gym. So this was all in the gym. Just like icky stuff I didn't like anymore, right? Like it's kind of a gross culture sometimes. And from feeling so strong and feeling capable, and also knowing when I had was at my edge, right? I had been strength training to a point where like I was like, oh, okay, that's it. That was the last rep because I could feel my physical edge. I
Mm-hmm.
started to notice my physical edge when people would tick me off, when people would say things that I didn't like, that I couldn't stand by anymore. And I started to say something. And you know what? I had to leave certain gyms. There were
Right.
gyms where I was like, okay, we're not going to agree. You're not going to change. Fine, I'm going to leave. And so I got practice in the gym, and I realized that I could help people practice in the gym. I have, I think it's really important when you work in sort of any healing arts to have uh, clear boundaries as the practitioner for
Mm-hmm.
yourself and also for your clients. It helps
Right.
them feel better and it mirrors something to them, but like it's okay. You can be kind and compassionate and warm and caring and have boundaries. And also,
Like I remember you said at some point in your book that you ask permission before touching a client's body to help them get into position or to help show them what the movement was, but that you weren't just going to touch someone without asking permission. And I thought, that's freaking awesome.
and I'm not just going to listen to their words. I'm going to watch their body, right?
Right.
So there's a difference here, right? Like if somebody's like, yeah, sure, their shoulders go up to their ears.
Maybe not.
Their head is saying yes, right? So this is what we were talking about.
Right.
Their head is like, oh, I don't want to upset her.
Right.
Whatever. I want to be easy. I don't want to be difficult. Saying yes or yes, but their body has told me an entirely different story. And I'm like, or why don't we try this? And I resurrect with a verbal cue, right?
Right.
And that's a really important thing, and that it changes, right? There are a lot of practitioners or a lot of people who will say like, oh yeah, it's always fine. And I like to leave room. Maybe they always say, okay, I try. And I will say, like, if anybody's listening who's doing, this kind of work, it's like, oh, I want to start doing that. I mess up sometimes and forget to ask. Like I make mistakes and I apologize. But so I try, especially with clients who say like, oh, it's always okay to check in anyway. And I say, I'm going to ask. It's an opportunity for you to check in and make sure it really is. Because it changes all the time. Changes with our partners and people we love and who we're physical
not in
with.
the mood
sometimes
to be bothered like, sometimes. Right.
Don't touch me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So big takeaways from the book. What do you want? What was the goal to have people understand?
That first I wanted to connect with people, right? So I had that experience of reading The Body Keeps the Score, and I wanted other people to feel seen.
Yes.
And honestly, like I also got to be seen, right? So which was nice. So there was that. That was sort of a quieter thing. That's not a big takeaway, but that was one of my takeaways.
Of course.
And then, one of the big things is that you can use movement to help you thrive and have a fulfilling life. It doesn't have to be about all the things we tend to make it about. Getting better at something, getting smaller, getting bigger, maybe if you want to be more muscular. It's not even about performance. It can be, but like it can also just be like, my writing practice is really suffering.
Right. Well, that's a beautiful lesson there. Yeah.
So, movement.
And like your mom, you just want to tie your shoes when you get older,
Right. Absolutely. So that is a big part of it. I think also that any movement practice, this is a big part of the book, any movement practice can be turned into a healing movement practice.
I think just by focusing inward on what the body is doing and getting yourself out of your head and not focusing on everything around you helps. I know that helps me feel more grounded and more in the moment and more in my body, whether I'm moving whatever part of my body, especially like in this new Pilates practice that I've been doing, like I'm focusing on the actual movement and the alignment of my body and what body parts going where and where feet are pointing, and because that all matters. Who the hell knew, but that all matters. Right. And just the movement itself, and how does it feel, and where's my elbow, and let's breathe. And what I didn't know about Pilates also, and I think I was probably doing it wrong all those years I was doing mat Pilates by myself, is it matters what the inhalation and exhalation matters as to what part of the movement it's coordinated with. And I think I had always sort of just naturally done it backwards from what the instructor says. And so like when you push away, that's the exhale. And when you're I don't know how to. I'm not a fitness person, so I can't explain that. But
it
just
varies
focusing on
from,
all of those things
yeah.
makes it very mindful and meditative for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are coming home to your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you saying
And
about breath?
not
I
what
cut you off.
Oh, I was going to say it varies from modality to modality. That's why I
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, it's this one. I didn't want to misspeak about Pilates. I am not
Yeah.
a Pilates instructor.
Yeah. No, nor am I. I've done it 5 times, you know.
But yeah, it's coming home to your body, and not something like Pilates on the reformer. You're not looking in a mirror, you're turning inwards and feeling your body.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what I mean, obviously plenty of gyms have a bajillion mirrors in the free weight section. I work out at home now. Ever since COVID, I don't have mirrors, and I try to I historically, one of the reasons, even when I wasn't training with a barbell, would train in barbell clubs, because they usually have free weights in there too, is that they tend not to have mirrors everywhere. And it's really about, not because if you try to watch yourself do a movement, you're going to mess up your form, because your eyes are going to be,
we're in the wrong place.
Your neck do things, right?
Right.
This is really about feeling the internal experience. Like you said, is my elbow in the right place? Is my breathing pattern in the correct order? You're feeling these things. That's so, that's giving you access, practicing feeling your body during stress. Exercise is stressful. Even if you're enjoying it, it's stressful. And so
and
that
painful
then
sometimes.
Right. So then when you're having a heartbreaking argument, something that is also painful and stressful, you can come into your body for a moment and go, hey, what's going on in here? Where are my boundaries? What do they feel like?
Right. I could get through that. I'm going to get through this. I know where my limits are. I know where the edges are.
Right. And I can do it. I can be okay. And I can come into my body, even though it's uncomfortable, and get all that information.
And that's huge.
Yes.
Yeah. For someone who used to envision her body as a car, that's huge.
Most of my friends think of themselves as brains in a jar. So I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I teach with, I'm an English teacher, so I teach with other people who are all intellectually stuck that way too. And we're all, most of us are around the same age. I tend to be a little older, but around the same age, and we're all sort of facing the same issues. So there's a lot of talking and camaraderie and, oh, you can do it, like, oh, that's so exciting, So, it's a nice little cheering section. It's awesome.
Love that.
So your book is available anywhere books are sold.
Yep.
I accidentally bought a copy before your publisher sent me one. So I actually have 2. So I'm going to give one away as a present to someone, because I certainly don't need 2 of them. And I don't think anyone wants the one I wrote in. So I'm going to keep that one. But this has been lovely, Laura. Thank you so much for being here and giving us another way to give ourselves permission to heal. How about that? There we go. I don't know why I thought that was funny.
Thank you for having me. It was perfect.
Yeah, this was excellent. Yay! Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Permission to Heal. I hope you found it moving and inspirational. Please remember, you don't need anyone else's permission to trust and follow your heart. You have the power within you. Subscribe to Permission to Heal so you don't miss any new episodes, and please share this with your friends.